Welcome back. This is lesson 14, Hitler's Germany, and after this lesson you should be able to explore why and how Germany rejected liberalism. You should understand fascism to a greater extent, and you should be able to see how fascism changes Germany and why some might be tempted to defend authoritarianism. To begin with, we do have some notes here, so please take some time to look over them. Included in the notes would be a list of some of the challenges that Germany faced before Adolf Hitler, and therefore some of the circumstances that enabled Adolf Hitler to become a dictator. Included in that would be economic chaos, political instability, and a wounded national pride. We also have this chart here that you can take a look at. It shows one of the arguments against proportional representation, because when you have proportional representation, a fringe party like the National Socialists of May 1928 may have less than half of 1% of the popular vote and can win 12 seats because they don't need to win any individual horse races. And once they find their way into their parliament named Reichstag, they can influence the government and gain the public's eye. So lots of keynotes there. We do have some videos that you can go back and look at if you need to explore fascism in a greater extent, but I'm about to go over these notes with you. So what is fascism? For fascism, all loyalty lies with the state. Mussolini once said, everything within the state, nothing against the state. And therefore, in this sense, it is truly a collective ideology in the sense that you submit the individualism towards the state glory. A goal of fascist states is power. One way to exercise that power is to control your neighbors. Sometimes it'll be necessary to conquer them first. One of the other goals of fascist states is preservation of racial or religious unity. This is often the part of the German fascist experiment that is most often remembered. And it is connected to the Nuremberg laws of 1935, the race laws that made it illegal for Germans to marry non-Germans as they tried to control who was breeding with who. This ultimately ended up leading towards the Holocaust and the ethnic cleansing that ends up killing 6 million Jewish people. Another characteristic of a fascist state is a single charismatic leader with supposed superhuman characteristics. And that's why we submit our will to him or her, because that individual is more capable than we are. National unity becomes your life purpose. Again, that's a good definition of collectivism. Under fascism, there'll be a lot of manipulation of the hearts and minds of the people through propaganda and indoctrination to encourage great patriotism and to unite the people behind a common cause. There may be a need to regulate the economy. For example, in Schindler's List, they'd regulate Schindler's factories that he owns, but they tell him what to produce at them. Fascists are by nature anti-communist because communists are trying to create equality and fascists are trying to expose inequality and build a structured nation based upon putting the elite in positions of power. Speaking of putting the elite in positions of power, Adolf Hitler, seeing himself as elite, thought that he didn't have the need to consult others. So during the Night of Long Knives, when he purged his own SA and the leaders of the SA with his SS, he was quoted by saying, "I alone on that night was the judge, the jury, the executioner." And that would be in a violation of the separation of powers on which nations like America are founded. One of the goals under a fascist state is to create conformity, and they had a policy called Gleichschaltung. And under Gleichschaltung, everything was Nazified. So if you wanted a gardener's club, it became a Nazi gardener's club. If you wanted a teacher's union, it became a Nazi teacher union. So Gleichschaltung was their way of creating conformity. There are some people that would agree with these policies, and one is Schopenhauer. And he believes that our destiny should be in the hands of those with supreme will. And Sorel would add that unless we put society in the hands of those with supreme will, a society will tend to decay. Nietzsche called these individuals with supreme will supermen. And Carlyle talked about the great man theory. And finally, Giovanni Gentile talked about how the state can give our lives purpose, that individualism will be a purposeless life, and therefore we need to find those with supreme will to guide the state to greater unified glory. So, a summary of some of the conditions that existed in Germany before 1933 that allowed Adolf Hitler to seize that stage included a depressed economy, high unemployment, dissatisfied workers, a wounded national pride, a lack of confidence, radical groups fighting in the streets, and a desire to return back to authoritarianism that they had had under the Kaiser. If you can't remember much about the rise of Adolf Hitler, and if the notes that I provided for you didn't seem to be enough, there are some links here. I would definitely recommend going to the ones in purple. They're about 20 minutes long each, and they tell you the complete story. One thing to consider is that on an essay, in order to really explore the division of society and the complexity of these issues, we must understand that there will be people that explore this position. A dictatorship can be effective. When we studied the USSR, we saw that under Joseph Stalin, the Soviet Union was transformed. And there was great economic successes that one could use as evidence to continue this argumentation. Now that we're studying Nazi Germany, I'd ask you to look at those videos in mauve above and say, can we continue this argument with evidence from Adolf Hitler? And those are some of the ideas that you may end up seeing on a multiple choice test. All right, so in summary, for Adolf Hitler's Germany, it gives us a chance to look at the principles of fascism, as outlined here. Adolf Hitler's Germany also allows us an opportunity to look at what circumstances might convince people to transition from a liberal to a non-liberal society. And therefore, it is important to go back and take another look at those videos in purple that help explain the German case study. All right, thanks for listening.